All right, it says we're live, so welcome, Karina. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Hi, well, thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely, and we were supposed to go on about 20 minutes ago, but we got so engrossed in our conversation that I forgot that we were supposed to actually be sharing this conversation. So, but as we were kind of getting to know each other better, because we just started meeting each other, and I think the way we met is actually a cool story, because I was just sharing with Karina that I've been kind of intuitively finding connections, and it's really about the energy behind posts that I see on social media. And I was like, oh, I need to know her. Like, I need to know her. And it wasn't even in the mind. It was just like in the video game of life. And I'm like, oh, I need to know her. So I commented on your post, I think like 3 months ago, and you responded. And we're just getting to know each other. So, and now that we're talking, I'm like, oh my gosh, now I know I want to connect with her. She's awesome.
Thank you. I love that we both speak the language of energy. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes I think that's definitely the magic, is following that alignment, is the energetic alignment that we have with people. And when we connect, you feel it. And so, yeah, I feel the same way with you. It's amazing.
Awesome, thank you. So, well, what we were talking about before I started recording, which I think we should continue the conversation, is what I titled the video, which is taking the leap and then using surrendered action. And you were just telling a story about how you decided to take the leap. So I'd love to share with the people that are listening what that story was. I think it's so cool.
Yeah. Well, you know, there's been many leaps I've taken, but I think that the most poignant leap that up to date that I took that really shifted me, you know, that I felt the shift not only outside of me, I saw the shift outside of me, but within me. I was back in 2016, when I decided to leave a career in law enforcement. For 16 years, I was there. And at the same time, really following the intuitive knowing within me that it was time for my relationship with the father of my children at the time, who I'd been with for 10 years already, to also end. And so there was a lot of ending, and in that year, it felt like the right thing to do. It was just the next level me emerging, and I had to come to a place where I was okay with with the next level me, to allow the old to sort of fall away, and more in that process of who I was and how I thought things would be, and what marriage was like, and the career that I had. And so through the growth, through spiritual growth and meditation, and just really diving deep into personal and spiritual understanding, back when I started back in 2010, I think all of that had prepared me for the next sort of evolution and the next step for myself. And so that was exciting. I mean, I got to a point where I knew in my heart that was the right thing to do. And I also knew that it wasn't an easy decision to do. I did not take it lightly at all. It was years and years and years of sort of like asking, like, is this the right thing to do? Asking the people, should I leave? Should I stay? Should I go? And really, in that decade, it was about trusting and getting to know my own self, and trusting what I felt was right for me. And listening to my intuition, listening to my heart.
Yes.
And then deciding from that space. So it took a good decade of trusting and learning and letting go, and in little itty bitty pieces. And so by the time that 2016 came, and I just knew it was a tug. It was the things around me were falling into place where I knew they could no longer stay. Almost like a little bit like it feels like right now with COVID. Like things are just shifting, and you have to either jump on board or not. And it was like that was happening within me. And so in 2016, I decided that I was going to leave my job. I put in my 2 weeks notice. I left the comfort of a government job and security and good paying job, and just the people and the relationships and everything that was connected to that story, and I let that go. And the same year, I also decided that it was time to let go of the relationship. And so I left the job, I left the relationship, and I started fresh, and it took that leap. And I didn't do it by myself. I had coaches. So this is an important part to mention, because I had mentors and coaches and spiritual work and healers and practitioners holding space, and so much of that support that went into my process as well. And so there's a lot of amazing angels and people that step in, sort of like how we're connecting, right? We never know why, but we're here to guide each other. And finally did that. And so that was the biggest leap that really transformed not only within me, like my trusting and really getting to the next level me in terms of peace and harmony and just authenticity and feeling that I'm on the right road. You know, maybe I'm not exactly where I want to be, but I'm on the right side. Like, so like I'm finally on the right road. You know, I was on the other road. I knew I was going somewhere, but I wasn't meant to be there. And so I finally made over the leap to the other side. And it brought with it, as I was telling you, so many challenges. It brought with me so many challenges. But again, I think that what I want to come back to is I think it's the trusting piece, is the surrender piece. It's the constantly coming back to not knowing. And it relates so well with what's going on right now. Absolutely. I feel like right now I feel so grateful for that experience in 2016 because I thought I've been through this before. I remember being in a space of not having anything. Yeah. So when I took that leap and I left with nothing. I didn't have any support from my partner at the time. No child support. He was upset and for whatever reason. And I decided I wasn't going to focus on those things. I was going to focus on really just stabilizing my own life structures, you know, as authentically, as lovingly as I could at the time. And that meant that I left everything I knew. I moved into my house. Thank God that I had a property that I purchased back in 2013 that I moved into, but had nothing. Had no refrigerator, had no stove, no beds.
And there wasn't like a severance package or unemployment because you would quit, right? So there was so you left that like secure, stable, secure government job that everyone tells you should do, right? All the conditioning. Get the job with benefits and retirement and just stay there, never leave.
Yeah, I left all the boxes. You know how you check off the boxes? I went to college, get a career, get this. I left all that. Left it. Had an amazing secure life with my partner at the time because we did so well and we had a home and whatnot. But the thing is that we weren't married, so I didn't have any of that. So we never got married. We had children together, we lived together, but he never wanted to marry me. And I thought, well, that's the problem. So after years of trouble, so I didn't have at all, like when you get married, you're married and you sort of get some support, but I didn't have any of that either. Right. And so, and so I left all that stuff and I had to start fresh and with nothing. And a lot of that time was spent in contemplation, in meditation, in really not focusing on the external circumstances, but really wanting to focus on where I was going and the life that I wanted to build. And so it was so deliberate and intentional that I feel like I probably lived in a sort of, in another reality of some sort to survive, to really survive at that point, because I didn't have that. And I thought I was going to, and so my idea when I left was, I'm going to leave this, I'm good. I was doing well in coaching. Yeah. And I thought, I'm going to do this full time. And like I said, my body pretty much froze. It was like, this is way too much at once, all this change at once is too much.
Well, because you're like taking apart the false self and you're living out your authentic self and like listening to your intuition and connecting to this much larger source. And then all of a sudden, like the ego, the stronghold, everything comes back like this really strong grasp.
Very strong.
Yeah. Okay, so what happened then?
It did feel that way because I felt like it felt like the last parts of that old self were just clinging to me. And it felt like I couldn't get rid of this stuff and it was heavy and icky. And
I'm only laughing because I know I've been there. It's actually not funny at all. But when you can look back at it, it's funny. But I'm not laughing to be insensitive.
No, I totally, looking back at it, you're just like, and to be able to see that, how difficult it was to really scratch these old parts of you off. And also how attached your ego is to those parts. And then also to recognize, and so there was a lot, I remember at times there's a lot of work where I was just like asking my higher self to help me release the attachment to my ego. You know, like the attachment, I didn't even know I had it, but I can feel it. Like, why is it still hanging on when I've done all this other work and did all the healing and tapping and doing all this
You're
stuff,
supposed to reach that destination. You're there. You got there, right? There's a destination.
Yeah. And then I froze. So I got to a point, I was in a situation where I had to surrender to ask for help. And being the driven, you know, Karina that I was, and just always making sure that I can take care of myself. And you know, at that point, not asking for help, that was really tough, to have to ask for help and say, oh man, I'm in a situation and I need help. And the situation that I was in was that, you know, it was a tough one because coaching wasn't happening. As much as I wanted it, as much as I wanted to get on live and get on this and call the, you know, and do the work and help, I just couldn't do it. It was this feeling, and I realized now that it was depression. There was some sort of depression, because it was just so out of my character. And so what happened next is really where everything starts to fall into place, right? When you do the work and you trust, and it's difficult to do, but I gotta say that when you do the work and when you are really linked up to this intelligence, right? This omnipresent, all powerful, all giving, always here. When you're linked up to that, there was times where I had nothing externally that I could see, but I felt full inside, and I knew that at some point that was going to manifest. And I really followed Ernest Holmes a lot during that time. I read a lot of sort of his practicality of putting those spiritual principles in place, and just replayed it and replayed it and replayed it and replayed it and replayed it. Because during that time, I mean, I really needed to depend not only on another coach or other people who were doing things, but on this higher power who I knew at that point was going to be the only thing that was going to move me through to the next step, you know? And so I asked for help. I did the work. I prayed. I sat. I had amazing alignment buddies, you know, that I still to this day connect, and we only connect to align. That's the only relation, like the reason why we connect is to align and to really speak the truth and to speak the reality that we want to live, right? So that we start to, so I started to really practice this a lot, and just starting to feel the life that I wanted to live, feel it. And so when I said that support is so important, and why I believe in coaching so much is because it works, and because we can't do this by ourselves, you know?
No.
And so what ended up happening is that I just surrendered, and I said, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I don't know how I'm going to pay the $12,000 that I need to pay in the next week before my house goes into foreclosure. And I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know that something greater does. I know that in a parallel reality where all things exist and all possibilities exist, this answer is already there. And so it was really getting myself out of the way of that, and trusting. And the one thing that I remember really looking at that really got me through was my tree in front of the kitchen window. I have a tree. I don't even know what kind of tree. It's like a tulip tree. It has beautiful little tulips. And what I remember connecting to when I didn't see anything else that I could connect to was the way that it danced. And the way that it danced, because it was the thing that we couldn't see, right? That the air that I couldn't see. I mean, I know it's there because it's moving the tree, but it is the thing that I couldn't see that I knew was always present. And so I would always connect to that and say, you know, just like there it is. There is that answer. There is that love. There is that security. There it is, you know, because I can see that the tree's dancing, and I can always come back to that. And it was that one practice that really I feel I always came back to when I needed it the most. And that was magical. What happened next was magical. But I don't know if you have any questions up to now. I've been talking a lot.
No,
about
that's,
that,
oh my
but I'm
gosh.
sure that you can relate to that process.
I can relate, and I want to actually break it down because I feel like as I'm doing these interviews and getting to know so many people that there's like similarities to the awakening process in that you reach a point in your life where you just can't be the false self anymore. And you, not everyone, but I'm saying in your story, there's a moment where you're just like, your body takes over. Like mine was like throwing out my back over and over. You know, it's like something happens. I got my face was partially paralyzed with Bell's palsy. Like physical manifestations, like things where your this false self, this kind of like sleepwalking version of yourself just has to stop. And then at some point you find the strength to like really take the leap or to take a huge risk for you. I mean, leaving a relationship with children and leaving a secure job, right? That's super scary. And in the world of like the world, like you said, you check all the boxes. Like you spend your whole life being taught, okay, I got to go to college, I got to go to, you know, do all these things and get the good job, and then you're going to be so happy, you know, and then you're just living this false life. So that happens to you. And then what I love is that when you do actually take the leap, you start to really rely on something bigger than yourself, like God, source, universe, whatever. You know, the Tao says if you name it, then it's already, you know, being, you can't even name it. But so you rely on that, and then you start to build your team. And what I find really interesting is that the team is delivered to you.
Yeah.
You find people that are kind of the same level of consciousness, like right when you need to be friends with them, if you're open, they come in.
Absolutely.
And then as you're going through that process, you're really, and then the other part that you shared that I think is like so amazing is that there's what Martha Beck, I told you my coach is a Martha Beck coach, and what Martha Beck calls the change back attack. So when you start to really evolve into change, there's a massive attack, a change back attack. Sometimes it's small, sometimes like 10 times a day, just small. And sometimes it's really big, like what happened to you where you go into a depression, even though that wasn't something that you really experienced before. I think you said, not really, right? And so, and then it's really just a test and like the contrast to say, are you really willing to be free? Like, or do you want to continue to kind of, like at the end of the day, what your story really shared is that you decided to trust your internal world instead of the external world.
Yes.
That's like really, really scary. And so I want to name, before I ask you something, I want to just name, and then I want to hear you say it, but I just have to name the courage. Because sometimes with people like you and me that go through these processes, we don't even really think about how courageous it is to like literally jump off the cliff. So just naming that. But what were you gonna say? Sorry.
Yeah, no, and I think sometimes it is a full trust, right? Like it's not until you look back where you realize that, wow, I really had to be carried by something greater. And in order for that to happen, I had to surrender. But it really was the idea that the belief in knowing that the life that I desired, that the peace that I desired, that the love that I desired, that the acceptance that I desired, that the lifelong loving marriage that I desired, the amazing clients and coaches, and the life where I'm giving of myself and feels very purposeful, that's real, you know, that's real. And then when we trust and we are willing to say, if I want that, that means that this can't exist anymore. There has to be a sort of mourning and a death to that. And it's not easy, you know, because there's many times where you want to go back because it's so uncomfortable. The new is so uncomfortable that you're like, well, maybe did I make a wrong choice? The doubt comes in, and you know, all these things. And like you said, it's really asking you, are you ready for this? Do you really want it? Right? And it's a constant taking baby steps forward of like trust and then understanding that how sort of your brain wants to just pull you into old patterns and conditioning, and that's all that is. It's just a condition. It's just a story that you've told yourself, but it isn't the reality. The reality is occurring, you know. And so that in itself is such a powerful practice to always remember that that you know that the courage comes, like, you know, sometimes you don't have the courage in the moment, but you realize that you do have it all along. You just got to take the step, right? You just got to take that next step, right? And so for me, when I realized that, now looking back, was when I decided that my house was about to go into foreclosure. I was starting to feel like a failure. I was starting to feel like, did I make the wrong choice? You know, that I'm losing the house. I didn't have the coaching or the business that I thought that I was going to have at that point. The money wasn't coming in. I I decided, you know what? I'm gonna let go of what I think I should have been with a master's degree, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm
Yeah.
gonna go and follow my gut. And so I remember having a conversation with Creator. I said, all right, show me the way. Whatever you send, I will go. Whatever you send, I will go. And I remember having this nudge to just substitute teach because I could at that point, right? And I decided to teach because I was missing the kids. I worked with youth all my life, at-risk youth. And I was missing the connection with the students and just people. And I said, that's a perfect thing that I can do. I can just go substitute teach. So I started substitute teaching. I ended up at this charter school, very close to my house. Actually, the same city where I worked at for 18 years.
Wow.
And so, it went back, but I went back to education, right? So instead of the law enforcement intervention part, I went into the other part. And it so happened that life organized itself. So within a year, I was teaching full time. So my income, my income got better than what my income was prior to when I left my job in law enforcement. So I was making similar or a little bit more money at that point. The whole point wasn't even about the money. It was that my needs were being met. You know, my needs were being met. I met a person who said, hey, by the way, so prior to me getting that job, I was about to lose my house. And I said, all right, I don't know the answers. I tried everything I could at this point. I had a job, I was trying to pay my mortgage on time, but I was so behind that I couldn't catch up.
Yeah.
And so they didn't let me make payments anymore. And they said, if you want to keep your house, you know, without going to foreclosure, then you have to come up with, pay the $12,000. I had $4,000 in the bank or something like that. I was really working really hard to catch up and, you know, just really stabilize myself because I knew that I could, and I wanted to be responsible, and I wanted to make sure that I kept my promise with all these people and things that, you know, that helped me along the way. And I was like, where do we get, you know, $8,000 from? Like, I couldn't think about it. And so I started asking people, hey, you know, do you know something that I can work or extra gigs here and there? I was willing to do anything and everything that came my way. And so I would ask. And this I asked this one teacher, and she said, hey, you know, you should try thinking about maybe doing, you know, adult school or at a community college since you have a master's and whatnot. And I said, yeah. And she's like, and have you done your taxes? Didn't even cross my mind that I hadn't done my taxes. Like I must have been in such a place that that didn't even cross my mind. And I was like, no, but then I thought, well, I don't know what the return is going to be like. But you know what? I had asked. Right before I had asked, I remember having a conversation with Infinite, and I said, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know that you do. And I know that the answer is already here. And I'm ready, and I will see and follow all the intuitive hits, all the messages that you send me. So I went to work the next day. The next day I was like looking, where are the things that are going to lead me to the thing, you know? And I was just alert for the things that were out of the ordinary, because I know that's where Infinite is. It's out of the ordinary. It's never how you want it or how you see it or in the way that you think it's going to come. It's always in the things that just, that's weird. That happened. Let me follow it, right? So that's how it was. This girl told me, I had never talked to her about it before. I never asked her. She had no idea about my story. And she says, you should follow. Here, I'm going to give you this number to my guy. Call him and, you know, do your taxes, see how much you get. Well, I ended up doing that. I had my own CPA that I've been using for years and years and years. And I said, well, this is the time, you know, God speaks this way. I'm going to go with this guy, see what happens. I ended up doing it. The return was almost to the T, to the amount that I needed that week. $8,000 something, that, you know,
that's crazy.
At the other money. And it was a moment of like, told you to trust me. I told you I got you, you know? and the reason why that was bigger than all these other things was because that was my livelihood, like my kids, and I was, you know, house, and like that was amazing to me how those things just happened in a week. So I did manifest that money, and I was able to pay the amount that I could. And so now I'm good. I'm caught up. You know, I'm stable. I'm stabilizing my life structures. I met an amazing human being, fell in love. He is really the manifestation of what I imagined so many years before. And it's all working out perfectly as I imagine feeling. you know?
Yes.
And so I think this is important for me, is that I always try to remember what I wanted to feel, you know? So what were the feelings that I wanted? What were the feelings that I wanted to feel when I called and I desired for a better, you know, a better spouse, or a more loving spouse, a more connected, you know? And so those are the feelings that I when I think about when I'm speaking to God, and how I'm asking, is that's the connection. That's the feeling that I always come back to. And when those things come to you and you manifest them, they feel just like it. And that's how you know that you're being answered, right?
Right.
And so so to say that, like now COVID is happening, and I feel like I went through this in a big way back in 2016, but I think one of the things that I love to really, really help my clients and help even my students is this peace and trusting, you know, and allowing and knowing that there's so much magic in the unseen, and that we are so conditioned to react and respond to what we see, but not to the things that are really going to make the thing happen. It's the inner stuff. It's the things behind the things, you know, the energy behind it. And that's been my practice. And I that's why for me, I love connecting with women. I love connecting with parents. You know, I started in the parent coaching industry as a conscious parent myself, because I had my little ones, and I knew that I didn't want to repeat my parents, and I wanted to evolve. And so that's been evolving as I grow. My coaching also has been evolving as I grow. And but at the core of it is always coming back to your essence, the essence of who we are, the thing that connects us all, the oneness in all things, right? And just coming back to that. And that's why I love being here and just connecting with people like you, who really understand that oneness philosophy and idea and practice, because I think at the end of the day, those are the things that move us through. Those are the things that is the community that's going to help us move through the hardship, or that is going to be sometimes that is going to be the sort of sign of the evidence that we're like, oh, we're being taken care of because I have this group, you know, and I have this person. Yes. And so, so that's the story for me about taking the leap and trusting and surrendering, that we are going to be taken care of. Yes. that we are really truly supported, that we are maintained and sustained in more magical ways than we can even imagine. But simply acknowledging that and allowing ourselves to think that and be there for a moment, you feel it. You feel that.
And like you said, like you can't
to live now.
I know, and it's like what you can't even imagine, because your mind can't even imagine. And what I love about that story too is that a lot of people I talk to end up having some story where like they leave their job or they leave their house or whatever, and then at the right exact moment, like when I left my last job, I did get when I was about to not be able to pay the mortgage and all that, like within 3 days, I got a funder from nowhere just to come in and fund the school. And I was like, oh, I just got my 5-year memory, so I remembered that. But at that time, 5 years ago, I just thought it was like a coincidence, or I got lucky. But what I'm seeing now is it's not true. And we had this very complicated real estate transaction, and our renters left, and we had months and months of paying this mortgage in Oakland, and we lived in Sacramento. It was just like this headache. And then we finally got everything taken in order, and I went on a silent retreat, and I got totally connected. There's a great place to do a silent retreat in Vacaville called Silent Stay. And I go there about every 3 months. I used to before COVID. And I spent a couple days there, and then I came back, and within like 12 minutes, because I was so just open and just like attached to nothing, but like open to everything. That's Wayne Dyer. I love his like attached to nothing and open to everything. And I was just like, I was like, I just need this it just needs to be done. And I was like in the video game, I like to say, where I was just like watching myself, and I was like typing buttons. And I like called our people that we co-own the place with. They're in New Zealand now. And I called one lawyer and called the realtor and then called the loan officer. And like within 12 minutes, everything was settled. And then that day we got the exact amount in our tax return of what we had spent in the 6 months. And we thought we had lost, right? And it was like, oh, so if you just take care of the source and you just take care and stay there, and your story is so great. I haven't thought about it this way, but it's like looking for the things that your mind is not expecting. Like, this is like a small story, but I think it's really funny. I was telling my wife this morning, we just moved our house, and our last house had this really big backyard. And we were very attached to the big backyard. It had like a basketball court, which is like my dream. So we moved to this new house, which is super beautiful. And this is like a total entitled story. It's not even ridiculous what your mind does. But we moved to this new house, and I walked down the street, and like a block away, there's like an old elementary school that's not used anymore. And there's this massive football field, basketball courts, and everything. I was like, we just got, like, our backyard just got 10 times bigger. That's why when I was running there today around it, I was like, oh, because my mind just had a story that I had a big backyard. I was going to lose the big backyard. So I love what Kyle C says, and he says you can measure what you're going to lose in your intellectual mind when you leave your job or you take the leap. But you have no idea what you're going to gain. You stay connected to the source, like, it's so huge. And so I have so many stories like that. And when I first started to really wake up and pay attention like you did, I did the same thing. I was like, okay, God, show me that this is real. Because I was like not a believer or whatever. I was like, I don't believe any of this. I'm an intellectual, and then went on vacation, and I said, I'm just going to surrender today. And I'm going to let whatever happens, I'm just going to be in this. And we had no plans. We had no schedule. We were just going to drive. And our tire popped in Paso Robles. So it was like 108 degrees. And I had the two little kids in the car. And I was on the side of the freeway. And I'm like, this is not what I asked for. I didn't want this.
Yeah.
Then, because that tire popped, we drove down the road, ended up in Pismo Beach. And we were in this like beautiful hotel that's usually like $500 a night. And the guy was like, I'll just give it to you for $100 because you have little kids and it's like 10 o'clock at night. That's the best night we've ever had in a vacation, ever. And I was like, okay, I believe it now. That's all I needed. My mind needed something to prove to me that if you really do surrender and stay connected to the source, that you can actually manifest what Eckhart Tolle says, like the unmanifested, like you said. What are the feelings? That's the unmanifested. And then if you just really stay in those feelings and continue to stay in aligned action, then your story proves that.
Right.
Do it, right?
Yeah, and you mentioned action, and I think that's the piece where, in terms of manifestation, sometimes, especially in the spiritual work that we're doing too, because it's easy to also just come inward. It feels so good to come inward, yes. to be in that meditation and to be connected and to feel like everything's already being taken care of, and you're in that space that feels just like all your needs are met and everything's here and there's no issue, right? And then you come out to the real world, and then it's really then that action, and it's not even big things in terms of action is what I want to say. It's the thing done with intentionality. It's the tiny little things that you can do today with intention.
Yes.
What I can't even tell you. That was a practice for me, and it was about like washing a dish and actually washing it and slowing down. So I'm not doing everything so rushed, but just to be in the practice of whatever action is in front of me, right? So what is the thing that I need to do today, right? What is not tomorrow, but what is the thing that I need to do today? I need to take care of today and do that thing with as much efficiency and love and your purpose, and knowing that one thing is going to lead you to the next thing. That's exciting to me. Yeah. Because then I know that everything, like the running, if I have to go do a run errand to Home Depot to buy a bulb because I need to change a bulb, like that tiny thing. And sometimes we think that it needs to be connected to the bigger vision or the bigger desire or your goal. But to me, what I have found is that in doing the little things in front of you with care, right? And in doing them in the most loving and intentional way, those little things are the things that lead you to the next day and the next day and the next. Yes. And so I think sometimes we need to remember that everything really matters. Like everything you have in front of you, the tools, you have a playground in which you can play and that you can use to sort of mold this next level life that you want to desire. And so right now, that's what I'm playing with is really allowing this beautiful partnership that I have, it to evolve into a blended family, into a marriage, into and really allowing that to unfold. And that's, to me, that's where I am at this very moment. And then I have all these other desires to want to coach. I love coaching and I love supporting. And if I think about this though, I'm already doing that, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes we desire this.
Doing it right now.
Yeah, doing it. Yeah, the brand writing. Yeah, like the brand and the program and the digital thing. And I did all that too.
Yeah.
But I'm realizing that I get to do that with so many parents.
Absolutely.
Because I have a beautiful group of students that I get to support. And through special education, we have a beautiful group of parents that you get to support, right? Like they're connected, right? We got to collaborate and we talk. And so there's a lot of that goes into what I get to do now. So I always love, and I always say, wow, how cool that it is that I got the perfect, amazing, job or career right now in special education. I had no idea and I would love it so much. But I realized that what special education is that it's really about getting to the essence of things.
Oh yeah. It's
getting to the essence and to the basics and to the skills.
Yes.
And that is what coaching is. It's just really allowing us to get better at these tiny little practices that build us up. And that's what I do, with the students and the parents. And I got to tell you, the parent coaching helps, right? To be trained as a parent coach when I'm really truly helping parents, it's amazing. So I've been blessed. I'm getting to see how the pieces are coming together. I'm getting to see how I'm really still doing the things that I love in the space that I'm at now. And I'm just really loving, I'm really loving where I am now, so that I know that it's going to take me to this next amazing best thing. Yeah.
Well, and this is what I'm curious about, because I feel like people might be watching this thing like, oh gosh, like she's so perfect or whatever. I don't know, but I want just because because everything's kind of working, and that's how I feel right now. But there are moments where like things are really hard, and that which is like a big contrast, where it's just like the more that I expand, it still happens. Like there's no destination. It's not like, oh, we've been doing this work and now we've really cleared the internal landscape. We're good meditators and we can have these conversations and everything's great. But it's like every time I evolve or start to expand, and it's like boom, like it just comes in, and sometimes it's like small, sometimes it's big. And so how do you deal with those moments when you're starting to evolve into that next level, and then something happens again? And like how do you handle those moments? Because that's where the humanity comes in, and I feel like sometimes these conversations can be all about the greatness, but I'm like, oh no, people that are doing this work are also struggling.
Yeah, it is. But that definitely happens to me. It happens to me a lot. And I think that it happens to me a lot. I'm aware that it happens to me a lot more often than I thought.
Yes.
But the beauty of that is that I think that for me, I've shifted the struggle story to understand and to know that that's just evidence that I'm on my way.
Yeah.
That's evidence. If I'm getting contrast, that means that I'm getting, that I was asking.
You're growing.
Right? And if I'm also getting contrast, that's an opportunity for me to clarify my asking. And it's also an opportunity for me to say, yeah, that's evidence that I'm moving forward. There's so many times where things happen like that, especially, when the hard things happen, where I'm just like, I get to choose right now. When to be aware is this, you get this sliver of time to choose. And I think that's the beauty of the work, is that really what we're doing is we're buying us a moment in time to sort of shift out of fear or love, or to shift out of, is this working for me or is this against me, right? And I think that's where I've been at, and I've noticed when those things do come up and the challenges do come up, like the example of having family over and feeling like, right? But and then I say, okay, so this is here. How is it going to bless me? How is this moving? How is this sort of catapulting my dream? How is this leveraging my desire? How is this fully supporting me? And so I that's one of the things that I think that I've done, that I continue to practice, is to rephrase the challenge as fast as possible. So not giving my brain the opportunity to sort of dive into the stories of like why it's not going to work. It does happen. That comes up a lot. And there's
yeah.
times too where I do get into the hole, the rabbit hole, and then I'm like, damn, like that happened. I spent way too long in that space, you know. But it's really about catching yourself.
Yeah.
You know, this is the contrast, and it feels like shit, and it feels ugly, and it feels like I don't have all the tools, and all of a sudden I was great yesterday, but today just feels like I'm not gonna, like, who am I? You know?
Or 1 hour to the next.
And then to just use that as evidence. Yeah, use it as evidence, you know? How am I gonna use this as the soil, right? I love, the practice for me right now is telling myself that everything is love. Everything is love, you know? And I think when, and the practice is so that if everything is love, even as when it shows up as fear, that is also being, that's the love being transmuted, right? Like fear being transmuted into love. So it's just a process, it's just on a scale. And I always think that everything gets to love. And if it shows up as less than love, it's just moving in the direction of love, you know? And so if fear, anxiety, whatever, I can move it up. And I love Abraham Hicks' emotional scale. I refer to that a lot. And I do have my own personal practices of moving myself out of the energetically out of those sort of levels of emotion. But to know that all emotion is good, and that all emotion is moving me in the direction of even better and better and better. You know, it's hard. Then it just becomes sort of like, okay, cool. You're showing me this. This is evidence that I'm not. This is just evidence that this is what I'm thinking about at this very moment.
Yeah.
I get to move it, and I get to shift it, and I get to little by little move it forward. But I'm no longer afraid of the fear. I'm no longer afraid of feeling overwhelmed or anxiety. Like I really do understand. I'm sorry, I had a call. Just a moment. Okay, sorry. I really do understand that there's a level of emotions on the spectrum, and I think my kids are trying to get a hold of me here.
They're like, Mom, how old are your kids? I meant to ask you.
Yeah, they are 8, 9, and 12.
Oh, cool. Mine are almost 7, almost 10. So about similar ages.
Yeah. And they're
okay. So you were saying, okay, what I'm hearing you say is that and I totally agree. And this is what I'm hearing from a lot of people is that the contrast, all of these things are going to keep coming, but it's just like you figure out your own practices to bring awareness to the fact that this is happening. And whether it's like, you know, I'm thinking about Michael Beckwith, who from Agape, who always says like things happen for you, and like just having that mindset, that understanding mentally, and then in your body that just things are happening for me. And so, like you said, just you know, and like so, it's like doing the self-talk, maybe it's doing some meditation, and sometimes it takes a week. Like we moved, and for a week, I was like, gosh, and then I wanted to beat myself up because I was like, you're in so much lack and scarcity and fear, and I'm like, well, you're tired, and you're not. And you're exhausted and you're not, everything's all, you know, screwed up. So you're just kind of struggling. And then, you know, but I slowly but surely, and it's the longest it's been for a while, like that whole week. Usually it takes like, and for me, it's like hour to hour, and I'll forget. I'll be like in the morning, I'm not a morning person. So I'll go into like negative thoughts and negative feelings. And then like noon, I'll be like, what was the story I was telling myself? Because I had like done some meditation, gone for a run. And I'm like, all of a sudden, I don't even remember because my ego is slowly but surely kind of doesn't have as much power over me.
Right.
So when I go through that process, it's like I don't even remember because I can just tap back into essence and the source and just be like, oh, okay, like this is all. And to your point of the looking at your tree, I feel like when I go on my run or whatever, it's just like I just go to the nature because then you can see the way of the way. Like you're like, oh, like watch the butterflies, watch the birds, like. None of them are sitting there creating stories. Their life is so terrible and creating suffering. they're just going with the flow of life. And I'm like, oh, okay.
And you know, right. Yeah. And I think that's a really good practice to get into, especially when we're just starting off, is to look at the things that don't have as much momentum, right? Like as a negative charge on things. And so nature tends to have that. A little baby tends to have it, right? And so like it just totally being able to just shift it and just, you know, into something that's just more naturally for you able to look at without having such a heavy charge behind things. It takes practice, but I gotta tell you, like it's so worth the meditation, the spiritual development, the awareness, the books, really listening to teachers. And that's how we rewire our brain, and we rewire
exactly.
sort of
and our nervous system, right? Yeah,
our nervous system. And it all does matter, and it all does work. But I seriously just brainwash myself for the things that I want. Like, I'm like, I get to build the life that I want. And so I believe so much. I'm so brainwashed that there oftentimes in the middle of the night, I'm reciting, I am loved, I am loved, I am lovable, I am loving. Like, there's just things where I'm in the middle, like, and that's where we want to get to, because our mind is going to be running out of subconscious constantly all the time. We have no idea. But when we start retraining ourselves, and now that story is no longer like an old story, but now you're an affirmation. You're really changing and rewiring your brain at that level. And so it's really cool to be here now at this moment, thinking about, I started the work here on personal spiritual growth back in 2010. And to be here now, I see it, I feel it.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, and I just can't wait to see. I mean, it's going to be amazing. Whatever happens from here moving forward, it's going to be amazing. And that's because I think that we train ourselves to really see the beauty in all things, and to, and like I said, like we said, to like Michael Bernard Beckwith is my spiritual teacher. I go to Agape all the time.
Oh, I'm so jealous. So much. I want to go there. I watch it every week.
Yeah. I miss it. I've been going there since 2013 in preparation for all the things that were going to come. And so a lot of that is rewired, and everything's working for me. I really, really do believe that. And as a result, things do work out for me, and so our words are very powerful. They're very, very powerful.
Yeah, I should have known you went to Agape. I meant to ask you at the beginning, because something you said, I was like, I bet you she goes to Agape, because I know you're in Southern California.
I love that place. It is, and I didn't. It was a place that somebody referred me a book. I was going through one of those moments where I said, I was asking, should I go, should I stay? I didn't know how to listen to myself. And somebody gave me a book of him, and I researched him. And I was like, he's just over here down the street from me. And so that's how I ended up going to the spiritual center. And it was like home since then. My children, my children know these principles, these amazing universal principles, and we practice them as much as we can. And I think that has been so helpful for us, and just for them to allow the shifting and the moving and the changes that have come their way. And just trusting. That's all working out for us. And so I've seen how I'm so grateful that I get to see it in them, that they're really adapting well to the changes. And I know that it's because they really do know and feel that things are working out for us.
Yeah. Well, I think we should wrap it up, but I could talk to you for hours, but just in terms of the live. Oh, I did want to say that I would love to go to Agape with you sometime, because my wife and I have always wanted to go. So we're gonna come and I'll just text you and be like, hey, can we meet you there, so we know somebody? But yeah.
When they open up, right now we're still online, so we're all like, I can't wait till they open up again. But absolutely, it would be great. You'd enjoy it.
Once it opens up, that'd be cool. Yeah, just to wrap up, are there any other things that you kind of wanted to share, or thought about that you didn't get to share just before we say goodbye?
No, I mean, I'm grateful for this time. I'm grateful for the people who are here with us and watching, and just truly the practice of getting to know ourselves and trusting our intuition and trusting our word. I think that is so important. And I have infinite trust. I really do have infinite trust that things do work out for us, and that if you're scared at this moment and you have to make a really tough decision, and I think, does it lead to love is the question, does it lead to more love is the question. And once you know that, you feel it, and you can't go wrong when it leads to more love and love, right? And so I think that's the guiding question that we ask ourselves now when we're in those challenging times, because we're all going to have these decisions, right, to make. And we really, it is the trust in ourselves and the trust in something greater that is going to help us move through that challenge But ultimately is about what I learned ultimately about all this is that I know better. Like the answer is right here. The answer is right here. And the work that we have to do is to go deeper.
Yes.
To go deeper within ourselves to get that answer. And so, but the practice of it is right. Listening to the teachers and looking at the guides and mentors and all that helps us. But at the end,
exactly.
You got it. You got
exactly.
it. Nobody else has it.
That is such a great way to end. And then I will say during this time, I didn't even realize this till the end, but during COVID, so many people are being laid off or leaving their jobs. And a lot of, I would say for collectively people's most thing that creates most safety in the material world is being stripped away from them. So you're an example of how you chose to do that, but many other people in this moment are actually not choosing to do that. And they're kind of like really worried. And so I think you're a great example of this is the moment to really trust more than you've ever trusted before, because it's the time of great change. And there's so many things changing, so many things shifting, and like, this is the time. There's no other time to wake up.
This is definitely the time to see beyond the eyes and hear beyond the ears, right? As Michael Bernard Beck would say.
Yeah.
And that means falling into when we feel like our things, our physical things, material things are being stripped from us. Look for what it is that you two have at that moment. Look for the laughter that you have in the house with the kids, right? Look for the conversations. Look for the warmth that you have now that everybody's there. Like that's what I'm talking about. Like, look beyond the eyes, hear beyond the ears. We're supporting. Yeah. That's
so cool. Well, I'm so glad we talked, and I know now why we connected, because your work with education and at-risk youth, and just so cool. I love how the universe connected us. And have a great day. Thanks for taking some time, and hopefully people are excited that they got to know you better.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
All right, thanks, Karina.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
You too. Bye.